In less than 20 minutes, you can be serving up the best cheddar broccoli soup using 8 simple ingredients. Welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. Today's recipe is so easy and it was so delicious the first time I made it. I had my friend test it out to make sure I wasn't missing anything because literally 8 ingredients, the best cheddar broccoli soup I've ever eaten. And it's super easy. So let's get right into it. I'm gonna use the pressure cooker. This is the 6.5 quart Ninja Foodie. Any pressure cooker will work. You can make it on the stove. You can make it in the slow cooker, but those directions are gonna vary. So you'll have to go over to my website, thesaltedpepper.com, to get those instructions. But if you wanna make it in 20 minutes, you're gonna use your pressure cooker. All right. There is such little prep to this. The most important thing is the type of broccoli that you use and the size particularly. So I'm gonna get into that in a minute. We're gonna start right away building our soup because it is just so easy. 1 cup of carrots, which is about 2 to 3 carrots, depending on their size. And I cut them in about, I don't know, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch slice. So what I do is I peel them, wash them, cut them in half lengthways, and then just chop them up like that. And they can go right into the bottom of the pot. We're not sear sauteing. We're not doing any of that. You don't need to. 1 cup of celery, which is again about 2 of the celery ribs, okay, which we usually call stalks, but 2 of the celery ribs. 1 cup, same kind of dice. All right, now let's talk about the liquid that's gonna go in there. I have 4 cups of chicken broth here. You can absolutely use vegetable broth. I did that yesterday in my test batch and it worked out beautifully. I didn't even notice a whole lot of difference in flavor, but make sure you get a good quality vegetable broth or use a homemade, okay? Now, very important, you're only gonna put half of this in to pressure cook. And I'm gonna explain that in just a minute. So I have a total of 4 cups, but I'm only gonna put in 2 cups. Perfect. Salt and pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of fine grind sea salt, or you could use kosher salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. That's the only seasonings we need, salt and pepper. The rest of the flavor comes from the ingredients and it's superb, okay? All right, the cheese is gonna go in later, so we're not gonna do anything with that right now. So let's talk about the broccoli. Now, I recommend getting a head of broccoli or a stalk of broccoli and not getting the broccoli florets that are already in a bag because they tend to be a little bit smaller. And if we used all small broccoli going under pressure, it would really break up quite a bit and you would not have as much texture in your cheddar broccoli soup. If you're okay with that because you want it really nice and fine with very little texture, by all means, you can use the small broccoli. But what I like to do is take a large stalk and I cut off the real thick end and then put that right over there. So I cut off the real thick end and then I keep these bigger pieces together in about, I would say it's probably about 3 or 4 inches in diameter, okay? And I just throw those right in just like that. Now I'm gonna also show you what I do here. If there are some thicker stalks like this, I will chop them up. And it is fine to have a few smaller ones, that's perfectly fine. So like I'll leave this intact, but I'll put in the 3 smaller ones. That works out great. If you have something like this and you don't wanna throw it away, just chop it up, just like that. And put it right into the soup. You don't want to put it in whole because we're not going under pressure for very long and it would still be a little bit tough. So this one I'm going to cut in half and then just cut off some of that. And there we go, a big one and a little one. I'm trying to think, do I even want to cut this one off? Oh, we got a lot of little ones. That's okay. That's all right. So in hindsight, I probably wouldn't have cut that one. That's okay. All right, there we go. Perfect. Now that's all that goes into the pot right now, except we need to make our roux. The roux is what's going to thicken everything up at the end, and we're going to do what I call a cheddar roux, okay? And it works. I do it in many recipes, and it works perfectly, and it's the easiest thing that you'll ever do. You want 4 tablespoons of butter. It can be salted or unsalted, it's your preference. Put it into a pan that can fit on a rack in your pressure cooker above your soup ingredients, okay? So whatever size that is, whatever size your rack is, this is a 6-inch Fat Daddy-O pan, no taller than 2 inches for the 6.5 quart, or it will not fit on the top. And if you have the smart lid, you might have to get a little creative. You may just have to set the pan directly on the food, okay? All right, let me grab the rack. And look, I just dumped it in. No stirring, no melting, no nothing. It's so easy. All right, nestle the rack down. You want to cover your pan. That's important. We don't want water getting in there. So we're going to cover the pan. You can do silicone or you can use foil, whatever you have. Put the pressure lid on. And we're going to turn the Ninja Foodi on. We're going to go to pressure. High is what we want. 2 minutes of high pressure cook with an immediate release. Now it's gonna take somewhere, I don't know, between 8 and 10 minutes for the pot to come to pressure. And then we'll go under pressure 2 minutes, we'll do an immediate release. While the pot's coming to pressure, let me go over why I did not add all 4 cups of the chicken broth before we went under pressure. And it has to do with the color of the broccoli mostly, okay? If you wanted to add all 4 cups in, you certainly could, but your broccoli at the end is going to be a duller green color, and it's just not as beautiful in the soup. It's also going to break up much finer, so it's going to be a much smoother soup. I happen to like the texture and the color of the broccoli when it is cooked a little less. So I use half in the pot to come under pressure, and half of the broth I put in afterwards, because the time to pressure is different. So it takes longer for the pot to go under pressure when you have 4 cups of liquid versus 2 cups. And the broccoli is not submerged in the liquid fully. So it's not boiling as much as it would be if we had 4 cups in there. It's like steaming a little bit, okay? Which keeps a more vibrant color. If you add it in, it's fine. It's gonna be delicious soup, okay? But this way, I just like the texture and the color better. So that's the reason. Once the pressure has released and the pin has dropped, it's safe to open up the lid. Make sure you do that away from you because it is gonna be a little steamy. And then the first thing we want to do is grab this container out, open it up. It's going to look horrible. Don't worry about it. The only thing you need to do is mix it up now. So take this and just mix this all up into like a little paste. The flour is fully cooked. The butter is melted. We are good to go. It's not going to taste like flour. I promise. All right, that looks good. So that is our cheddar roux, and it's gonna thicken our soup. All right, next thing is pull out the rack. Then we're gonna dump in the rest of the chicken broth, or you can use vegetable broth, that's fine. Put the roux in. And then I usually use the same little spoon or turner and just start to mix that roux in with that liquid. You can leave your Instant Pot or Ninja Foodi on the keep warm and just sort of go through the soup a little bit. It's gonna look like it's getting a little cloudy and it's gonna seem like it's very thin. The cheese also thickens it, so don't be tempted to add more of a flour slurry or a cornstarch slurry unless you want a really thick soup, okay? All right, next thing we're gonna add in is our cream and cheese. The cream is a half of a cup. And you could add more if you wanted, but I found that that was all that was needed. And then the cheese. I just sprinkle that over the top. And then what I like to do is go in with, I have a little masher thing. I like to use this, but you could use the same thing that you scoop the roux out with. You could use any kind of a spoon. It's gonna be fine. But I like to use this because I can sort of mash up the broccoli a little bit as I stir the cheese in. It's gonna take just a few minutes for the cheese to melt in there. You can turn on your sear saute, but do it on low or medium low. Don't go on high. We don't wanna boil the cream or anything like that. Okay. This soup is so easy to make that I realized I forgot to tell you how much broccoli I put in. So I use somewhere between 12 and 14 ounces usually, but you could use up to a pound of broccoli and it would be perfectly fine. And then the cheese is 8 ounces of shredded sharp cheddar. You can use any cheddar you want or any cheese you want, really. And that is about 2 cups, okay? But go by ounces, not cups, because the size of the shred will make a difference in the volume. So the volume measurement is about 2 cups, but the more accurate measurement is going to be 8 ounces, okay, of shredded cheddar. All right, that's it. We're done. Look at that beautiful soup. I mean, this is just amazingly simple, right? In fact, it was so simple. I told you I had my friend make it, but I also thought there's no way this is gonna taste good. Like when I threw these ingredients together, I thought I'm gonna have to tweak this. I'm gonna have to test this recipe like for months to get it right. And it was perfect the first time. I mean, oh my gosh. So then I just tested it with the vegetable broth and had my friend test it, and everybody loves this soup. It's like being at a restaurant and it really takes 20 minutes. It's so good. All right, then just ladle it into your bowl. Of course you want to serve it with some crusty bread, which I love making bread and I totally forgot to make any. So I don't have any bread. All right, let me show you. There are some bigger pieces of broccoli. Now, if you want to avoid those, mash them up a little bit more in the pot. I like them. I like the texture difference. So there's little pieces of florets and then there's bigger pieces of broccoli, which I just adore. You don't really get too much of the celery, although it is there. And then the carrots are there and they're all perfectly cooked. It's just lovely. Oh my goodness. It's amazing.